welcome to the conversation here on News Central Television. This is the show where we bring you analysis of the latest trending political stories on the continent. I'm Benga Aborowa.
And I am Rita Omodia. Happy Valentine's Day to all viewers across Africa. And of course, happy Valentine's Day to you too, Benga. Even though you didn't bring any flowers, but at least you have a touch of red with you.
Where's your touch of red?
It's in my blood.
Oh, okay. Good one.
All right, on today's edition of The Conversation, we will be going to Ghana, where a popular activist has been charged with treason over a coup comment. Also, we have update from Tunisia, where President Kais Saied has issued a decree to create a new judicial watchdog. Popular Ghanaian activist was detained over a coup comment.
Now, let's first start off in Ghana. Last weekend, popular political activist Oliver Barker-Vormawor was arrested on his arrival from the United Kingdom after making comments on social media about a coup. The activist was detained after posting on social media that he would stage a coup if Parliament passed a new bill popularly known as E-Levy.
The bill is proposing a 1.7% tax on electronic transactions, including mobile money payments. Oliver, who is the leader of the hashtag Fix the Country group, has been vocal in protest over economic hardships and against President Nana Akufo-Addo's government. Akufo-Addo's second term has been characterized by a series of protests over economic problems and brawls in the hung parliament as the government tries to push through top policies it believes could salvage the ailing economy.
Now, joining us on the conversation this evening is Mutaru Mumuni Mukhtar, the Executive Director of West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. And from Ghana, we have Arimiyo Osama. He's the co-convener of the hashtag Fix the Country movement in Ghana. Gentlemen, a warm welcome to you both. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this.
Now, I'd like to start with Mutaru. Last year, we saw, images were beamed across the globe of Ghanaian parliamentarians in fisticuffs over a proposed tax on electronic transactions, what we now know as the E-Levy bill. Why is it so contentious?
Well, it is very, very contentious for several reasons. You look at the parliament, the composition of the parliament of Ghana for the first time, it's a hung parliament, meaning that no party in parliament has majority of seats. And for a fact, they have equal number of seats, the two major political parties, 137, and one independent parliamentarian who has decided to be on the side of the ruling government. So they have a little, advantage in terms of numbers. And so for the first time, we've seen a huge contest in parliament in terms of voting when it comes to issues like this. And this was, properly and effectively played out during the time laying, before parliament, the electronic transaction, tax before parliament. And that is why this became so contentious and actually very, very physical for the first time in our parliament.
All right, we'll move over to you now. The Ghanaian government held consultations and town hall meetings just a few weeks ago on the E-Levy bills. How did that go, and what's the feedback from ordinary Ghanaians on the streets?
To be clear, a significant number of Ghanaians, significant portion of the population is against the E-Levy. And on all accounts, if you speak to people on the streets, the ordinary citizen, middle-class people, politicians and non-politicians, there seems to be very, very little, support for the E-Levy on the ground. And yet government is strongly bent on having it passed. And so we're seeing consultations now taking place across the country, organizing of town hall meetings to seek to explain to the citizenry the relevance and importance of having that E-Levy passed and having citizens contribute to the tax kitty to ensure that we contribute to development of this country. I don't think there hasn't been any, there has been any significant shift in terms of public support for it. There might be some marginal, support that government has been able to build over the last couple of weeks, but it's still very much tilted against a no vote for the E-Levy in Ghana.
Now, let me come to you, Remy Yor. The Ghanaian government is warning of an imminent shutdown of the economy if no steps are taken to shore up the revenue. The government needs more money, hence the proposal for this E-Levy. At the same time, the government is going ahead with plans to build a $100 million cathedral. What do you make of this?
For having me once again. It's quite unfortunate. Here is the case. We have a government that spends frivolously, and as we speak, the president is on a tour, and he has chartered an aircraft that cost him no less than $17,000 an hour. So you can imagine, and then we have this same president, or the current government administration, some few months back, decided to pay their wives. For what reason, we don't know. It's for just being their wife. It goes to tell you there's so much in the country. We have so much in revenue. That's why they are thinking of spending more. And talk less of our oil revenue, talk less of our mineral resources. E-Levy is a tax that is seeking to bring in about $7 billion.
Arimi, what, can you hear us?
I think we have technical difficulties for Arimi Yor. So maybe Mutaro can answer that question. I mean, a government that is short of cash shouldn't go ahead to build frivolous access, shouldn't be engaging in such large projects like building a cathedral that is worth $100 million.
Umuni? Okay, that's a serious issue there. I mean, Ghana is struggling to revive its economy, and then we have these issues of frivolous bills and expenditures going on. And, you know, it's a bit rampant when you see people in position of power, and instead of improving the lives and livelihood of the people, we see them spending money for their own personal expenses.
Okay. I mean, it's that's why we have the experts here. Now, I would like Arimi Yor to respond to finish his thoughts on that. He was making a point earlier before we lost him.
Yes. So basically, we have the Auditors General. The Auditors General role is to audit all government expenditure. And for the past 5 years, Auditors General cumulatively has reported over 30 billion Ghana cedis that hasn't been accounted for. There's no value to show for expenditure. Now, here is the case. The year 2020, the Auditors General report alone reports over 12.8 billion Ghana cedis cannot be accounted for. And now government is seeking to raise 6.9 billion Ghana cedis. Now we have an administration that is capable within 1 year to waste 12.8 billion without accountability, without value for it, seeking to raise 6.9 billion Ghana cedis. So it is contradiction. Why not recover all these monies that have been misappropriated or have stolen or by way of corruption? Why don't you recover these monies Auditor General has reported in the pockets of people and there's no value for it? But seeking to tax ordinary Ghanaians, whether you work or you don't work, because the nature of this E-Levy, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you are a working Ghanaian or whether you are not a working Ghanaian, whether you are an underpaid or underemployed Ghanaian, so long as you are going to send an amount of money from your account to another account, you will have to pay a tax of 1.75%, which is uncalled for.
Okay, Arimi, I will stay with you because unfortunately we're in a trend of a wave of authoritarianism turning from the east and the west, and that's why this particular issue has grabbed so much global attention. And reports we have that convener of Fix the Country, Oliver Mawuse Barker-Vormawor, has been charged with treason after his arrest last Friday at the Kotoka International Airport for a post on social media where he threatened to stage a coup himself if the E-Levy will be passed by Parliament. As a co-convener yourself, what do you make of this? Arimi Yor. Okay, unfortunately, we're still trying to...
Okay, I believe Arimi Yor is back.
Arimo, can we have your take on the conclusion by the Ghanaian government of which Oliver, that's a fellow co-convener, has been charged with treason due to his coup-like statements?
What do you make of that statement?
Okay, basically, yes. The issue of Oliver's post on the social media is a matter of legal contention and is open to several interpretations. It's up for the court to decide whether what the comment Oliver posted online is actually can be interpreted to mean he has staged coup or he planned to stage coup d'etat. And the statement doesn't even say he's going to stage a coup d'etat. He said coup. So it's a matter of legal contention. However, on Friday when he arrived at the Accra International Airport, the way and manner he was whisked away and then kept away from his family and legal representation for over 68 hours is something that we at the Economic Fighters League have worries about, and we are much particular about human and civil rights. So the way and manner he was whisked away and against the Constitution, you are not supposed to keep a citizen beyond 48 hours behind bars without processing him for court. Yeah. So now you picked him up on Friday, and today, Monday, throughout Saturday, Sunday, you never prepared him for court, but you've detained him, forcing him to go on hunger strike. So right now, as we speak, Oliver is on a hunger strike, and we at the Economic Fighters League are much worried about his human rights that are being breached, awaiting the court's decision over the comment he has made online.
Okay, over to you now, Mumuni. Here, Arimion mentioned the fact that he said a coup and not a coup d'etat, even though a lot of people might complain about differences between the coup d'etat and the coup. But looking at it now, do you fault the statement, Oliver, on social media?
You think it's a bit too much?
Well, I think he could have done better in terms of the statement, the entire statement, especially the last two lines of his statement, where he talked about he staging a coup if, the E-Levy is passed. And he went to conclude that with the phrase useless, military. So this sort of complicates the statement he has made. But I think that to charge him for treason is an outrageous charge. I do not think that they would be able to secure a successful conviction against, Oliver. But of course, as we all know, that charge is significant enough to frustrate him and frustrate him enough to, their satisfaction. Like we have already seen, the court has remanded him in prison custody, to come back in 2 weeks' time. That in itself, in my opinion, is the beginning of the frustrations he might be put through for his statement. We all know that Oliver and his team have been very, very prominent in terms of activism against the ills and wrongs of governance in this country, things that ordinary citizens are worried about, talking about security, spillover effect of the elections that just took place. Significant number of people, suffered as victims in terms of injuries or even, dying in the process. Issues relating to the economy and the current E-Levy, the Fix the Country demonstrators have been at the forefront of this activism. And Oliver has been very, very loud on that. Any government would not be comfortable with that kind of person. But in terms of the charges, I do not think that they would secure any successful conviction. I've listened to some commentary by some lawyers, and apart from the word coup, they talk about the comment being conditional. It's a conditional statement to the effect that if the E-Levy is passed, he would stage a coup. If the E-Levy is passed, the E-Levy has not been passed. Beyond that, how do you establish, or can they establish, that Oliver was in the process of planning a coup, or he has planned a coup, or he has the capacity to stage a coup? Some would go beyond that to look at the capacity of that statement to instigate or inspire other people to engage in acts that can lead to a coup or an equivalent of a coup. All these things put together form the context of conversations going on. But overall, I do not think the charge is competent enough, and they may not be able to secure successful conviction.
Now, I'd like to stay with you, Mutaro. Just last month, the International Credit Ratings Agency, Moody, recently downgraded Ghana from B3 to CAA1 with a stable outlook on the long-term issuer and senior unsecured bond ratings. The president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, swiftly condemned it as an attempt by the ratings agencies to impede the progress of his government in assessing funds to develop the country. My question to you, Mutari, is this: what is the current and true state of the Ghanaian economy, and what's in Moody's interest for impeding Ghana's progress, economic progress, if there's any truth in that statement by His Excellency?
I think that reaction is a very, very predictable reaction to Moody's or any kind of statement or rating that tend to undermine the economic profile of this country. I do not think that, I would have expected our president to say otherwise. It is same for nearly all, especially African presidents, to be able to stand up to the reality and acknowledge when things are not going well. Of course, the debt profile of this country is in a very, very bad state. And so, the economy is in distress right now. We have a debt to GDP ratio of over 78%, that's over 78% of our GDP. And several economic fundamentals, the wheels are coming off. So obviously, generally, the state of our economy is not in a good shape. And Moody's rating, puts a very, very negative, image on that, especially when it comes to the international community. If you're looking to mop up extra liquidity from the international market, Moody's ratings, play a big role. And so the president and the government are very, very sensitive to any comment or anything that looks negative from the international perspective. But the reality is the economy is not in a good shape.
Okay, Remy, let's hear from you now. The opposition, the National Democratic Congress, that's the NDC, what exactly is your position on the E-level? And is there any alternative, probably a compromise to this E-level?
Yeah, thank you very much. Before I proceed, in as much I have stated that the statement Oliver made on his social media page is a matter of legal contention. However, I would like us to be to state the fact, to put it on record that the post I didn't actually say the military is useless. He used the word army. So Oliver himself is a legal person. He's a lawyer, and he understands why he has posted up there. So now back to your main question on the opposition party, which is NDC. NDC has 137 members of parliament, and then they have the Speaker of Parliament also being from the NDC. So the only army that can stop the E-Levy from being passed is the NDC. And that can be done within Parliament. And the current finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, was approved by the NDC, and this was done through lobbying and maneuvering behind curtains. So the NDCs at one time have compromised and then passed. Ratify the proposed Minister of Finance, and he's now the substantive Minister of Finance. And when there were all indication that if they vote against him, there's no way he will become a Minister of Finance. So by the same procedure, we see the NDC having majority in number, because the Speaker of Parliament plus them will be 138. They have what it takes to do the lobbying to get this E-Levy scrapped. So they play a significant part of whether E-Levy will be passed or will not be passed.
Okay, staying with you, Aramiyo, what is the current situation as the bill passed the first reading, second reading? when do we get a verdict on the E-Levy, if it will be passed or not?
The sitting will come somewhere next week. If I'm not particular certain with the date, but the next sitting on E-Levy is when they will decide whether E-Levy should be passed. And there are negotiations behind curtains whether it should be reduced from the 1.75 to 1.75 to 1.5. But overwhelming majority of Ghanaians, and we at the Economic Fighters League, and I'm sure we at the all conveners of the Fix the Country are against this particular move. Is quite unpopular to understand. This is one of the bills that is taking longer in Parliament, and you will attest to the fact when they were at each other's throat in Parliament just to prevent it from being passed. And what even perturbed Oliver to make his comment was there was a birthday cake that was being designed to celebrate the birthday of the majority leader in Parliament, which goes to understand to shows how insensitive and lack of emotional intelligence the incumbent or the MPP side of Parliament are to the plight of Ghanaians, over and above the complaints of people, over and above the complaints of over 30.8 million Ghanaians. You people are going ahead to cut cake, make merry, when people are calling for the E-Levy to be pulled off.
What's the issue with that cake? Why are you so concerned about the cake?
It came at a point or at a time when one of the most unpopular bill in Parliament has to do with the cake. And when you go to the streets, the anger is everywhere, even right in the cities.
So, was it an E-Levy designed cake?
Yeah, it's quite an insensitive. The way it's been designed and the timing is wrong. This could have been designed any day. They could have made it F-Levy. They could have made it. It will still mean levy, and it came at the time when people are. It's quite an unpopular bill, and no Ghanaian who is of emotional intelligence will actually push something like that. But I would like to say something. The NDC side of Parliament really hold the key to pull all this E-Levy bill down.
Okay, Aribio, I think I go with you there. I mean, how can people be hungry? And you're talking about cake. So I think a lot of people in Ghana are really angry with this development. But now, talking about Oliver's case, now we'll go over to you, Mumuni. In a situation where it appears that everyone who talks about the government and talking generally, African, globally, is termed as a traitor or trying to impose terrorism. And we're also in an era where somehow we begin to question the independence of the judiciary. So now, Mumuni, do you believe in the judicial sector in Ghana? Do you think that it's going to give a real and fair verdict on Oliver?
Well, you and I know generally much of Africa is characterized by judiciaries that are essentially regime judiciaries that pander to the whims, and caprices of ruling governments. And so those things are still very much part of the system generally. And in our country, for a very long time, at least in the last 30 years, there has been a very strong tradition of strong institutions, including the judiciary. But in the last, few years, we've seen significant situations of compromise, situations of corruption involving the judiciary. There is actually a very popular documentary investigative piece that found some, judges, implicated in situations of corruption. And some of them have been relieved of their post, and some instances that people still talk about. And so this is still a big and essential part of the discussions when we talk about independent judiciary. I would want to hope and believe that Oliver would have a fair trial and we would have a fair verdict in the process. But when things like this are laced with politics, things can go any way and anyhow.
Now, staying with you, Mutaru, we've established the fact that the Ghanaian economy is in dire straits and the government is cash strapped. So they need money for development projects, for education, for health. and what have you. As an ordinary Ghanaian, what alternatives? Because the Ghanaian money payment system is quite big. There's a lot of money there, and developing Ghana is a collective task for all Ghanaians. What alternatives do you propose to this E-Levy? If you oppose E-Levy, we've talked about accountability. You've also mentioned the government should be more prudent in the way it spends money. Beyond those two, how can the government raise more revenue to run the country?
The average Ghanaian is a very, very politically conscious person. Whether educated or not educated, people are very conscious of things that happen within political circles and governance circles. Many have come to agree or to realize that the economic problem of Ghana is not a revenue problem. It is an expenditure problem largely. And so how we spend or expend the revenues that we accrue from all the sources internally and externally is a question or is an issue of concern to many. And so the ordinary person on the street, the conversation that happen on the street is that if you tell us that the economy is in a difficult situation and you are asking us to tighten our belt whilst you're losing yours, we want to see significant commitment in terms of reduction, cuts in expenditure relating to, government officials, the judiciary, the executive, and the whole component of governance. We want to see government making sacrifices in terms of expenditure. We want to see innovations that help in terms of mobilizing revenues that does not necessarily hurt the ordinary citizen. And so these kinds of things are the things that color our conversations. If you look at the E-Levy, how much E-Levy is seeking to bring in, it is about 7 billion Ghana cedis. That is woefully inadequate. It is small compared to the numbers that come out. Like my brother mentioned, the Auditor General's report that pointed to over 12 billion Ghana cedis lost in revenue to the state. If government is committed enough to retrieve these monies, that is far beyond what E-Levy is seeking to bring to this country. And so, and at some point, at some level, there is a sense that government is reckless in expenditure. There's some sense of corruption and indiscipline in the way we manage our resources. Our resources are adequate to lead to the transformation we seek if they are adequately applied. And so there's that kind of conversation going on. The gold sector, the mining sector, and the revenues that come to the government, many say we can't restructure that sector to bring in more revenues. We have the oil sector that has, recently become a big part of the economy. How do you leverage that part to make sure that we benefit adequately from that sector, apart from all the other sectors in terms of minerals and resources of this country? So the average Ghanaian does not believe that we lack in terms of resources to develop this nation. They believe that the leaders are not doing enough to secure the entitlements of citizenship for citizens. And so that is how people look at it at the ordinary level of citizens.
Okay, Arimiyo, Mamoni has clearly stated that the resources in Ghana are adequate, but there should be cost and expenditure. I know last year in Ghana there was also another protest, and it was dubbed "Drop the 2022 Budget," and it's according to most of the protesters that we heard, because we also had News Central TV go there for the protest, and they said that the budget does not once again address the core issues of the people. So still going forward, what would you have expected from the 2022 budget?
Basically, we expected that, like my senior brother mentioned right there is physical indiscipline. And Ghana loses over $3 billion annually to corruption. And in that same light, we are seeking to raise 6.9 billion Ghana cedis. So there is a contradiction on how we spend. Now, we were envisaging in the 2022 budget to be a budget that will seek to create jobs for the people. Now, if you look at the budgetary allocation for job creation, in the 2022 budget, it actually speaks nothing close to creation of jobs. They provided almost less than $2 billion just to create billion Ghana cedis to create jobs, which is totally uncalled for. So we were expecting that government will look at our generation capacity, because in any advanced country, when you have a very stable power generating capacity, then you will be able to industrialize. And when you industrialize, you'll be able to create jobs. And even before you create jobs, that means you need the educational system. That means you have to look at your educational system as well. So we were looking into a budget that will look at our power generating capacity. Currently, we are grappling to even satisfy our domestic needs. And we have an administration that is saying is going to create one district, one factory, and he is in his 5th year. There are no industries, there are no factories, as he has promised. Even though some of us knew such promises were baseless, because when you look at our power generation capacity, we are grappling to even satisfy our domestic need when it comes to electricity. How more do we industrialize? So we want, in future, not just even 2022 budgets, in future budgets, we want to see viable and feasible approach to solving the economic problems of Ghana. And that has to start with our education. That has to start with our power or electricity generation capacity. So what they have shown us, the 2022 budget is basically a list or menu of expenditure. When you look at the budgetary allocation to the judiciary, when you look at that of the executive, when you look at that of the parliament, and at the end of the year, there's a token we call ex gratia. There is an ex gratia that is given to parliamentarians, executives, and the judiciary. Beneath all this, I would like to state, right from the one when we started the protest, Fix the Country, even before that, my group, Economic Fighters League, have diagnosed this problem through the Constitution of Ghana. The 1992 Constitution of Ghana fundamentally has given power to the president. The president appoints almost every single government employee in Ghana, from the judiciary, from the Chief Justice, to the judges of the Supreme, to the lower courts, from ministers whom will be selected from parliament. So basically,
the issues are way beyond the E-Levy, and we really hope very soon we'll have you back to examine all of these issues. 30 minutes is not enough time to examine everything that has to be discussed. I'd like to say a very big thank you to you, Arimi Wasama, the co-convener of Fix the Country Ghana, for joining us on the conversation this afternoon. We do appreciate your insight.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we still have Mutaru Mumuni Mukhtar here. He'll be joining us on part 2 of the show to discuss the latest developments in Tunisian politics. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. You're watching The Conversation.
Many thanks to stay with us. And if you're just joining us on The Conversation, we have been discussing a proposed tax on electronic transactions, the E-Levy bill in Ghana, and the reaction of popular activist Oliver Barker-Vormawor, who was arrested after making comments on social media about a coup. Now, turning our attention to Tunisia, where President Kais Saied has issued a decree establishing a new provisional Supreme Judiciary Council, effectively replacing the body he abolished and granted himself additional powers to control the country's top judicial organization. The decree published on the official gazette on Sunday says the president controls the selection, appointment, promotion and transfer of judges and can act in certain circumstances as a disciplinary body in charge of removals. Contrary to international law, none of the judges appointed in the new council will be elected.
Now, it also forbids judges from going on strike, a form of dissent used to protest President Kais Saied's February the 6th announcement that the council would become a thing of the past. Hours after the decree was published early Sunday morning, more than 2,000 protesters gathered in central Tunis, many waving flags and chanting slogans in support of an independent judiciary.
ليكن الأمر واضحا أن هذا المجلس سيتم حله بمقتضى هذا المرسوم وتعويضه بمجلس آخر، ولا مجال للتشكيك في هذا الخيار. القضاء وظيفة وليست سلطة، والقضاة كلهم خاضعون للقانون. لا يمكن أن تكون هناك دولة خارج الدولة التونسية.
Le 25 juillet, on était 6 personnes. Nous sommes maintenant des milliers. Lui, le 25 juillet, il avait beaucoup de monde derrière lui. Maintenant, il est seul. Même avec soi-même, je crois qu'il n'est même pas avec soi-même. Donc, nous sommes fiers de ce peuple-là, de ces militants.
الحراك الديمقراطي، الشارع السياسي الديمقراطي متواصل في غاياته ويعني أساليبه. إذا كنا ندافع عن الجمهورية وعن الديمقراطية لا يمكن أن يكون ذلك إلا بأساليب يعني الديمقراطية. إذا كان هو انقلب على إرادة شعبه ونحن يعني نقول له يجب استئناف المسار يعني الديمقراطي، التغيير لن يكون إلا بالناس للناس.
I mean, you can hear the pulse of the people in Tunisia. It said on the 6th of January, 6th of July last year, when President Kais Saied decided to dissolve the parliament, there were very few people. There were lots of people in support of him because they right now, just
we have
very
people
few people
against him because his method is quite questionable. I mean, how do you say you want to rid the country of corruption and yet the body which is supposed to pass across laws, you're taking charge of it? So it's almost like your words and your actions are contradictory.
Tunisia is almost like a daddy knows best situation because he feels, I mean, if he had the way, he would take the police powers and everything onto himself. But we have Mutaru Mimuni Mukhtar, the Executive Director of the West African Center for Counterterrorism. He's still with us here on the conversation to discuss this latest development in Tunisia. Now, Mutaru, on Thursday, President Kais Saied appeared to be backpedaling when Justice Minister Leila Jafel told national television the judicial body will be reformed rather than abolished. And from what we heard him say so far, it's almost like there's no difference and he's abrogated all powers to himself. At what point will they label this situation in Tunisia a civilian coup? Because, I mean, that's what it seems to be, because it's become an institution on himself.
Well, the situation in Tunisia is very, very unfortunate. It's unfortunate at very many levels. If you look at what happened in Tunisia as part of the bigger Arab Spring, you know, the promise of the Arab Spring, part of it was that you would have an independent institutions of governance and leadership that responds to the needs and aspirations of the people. And yet, a few years down the lane, we're going back to the same factors or same reasons that brought us the Arab Spring or the Tunisian Spring in the case of Tunisia. We are talking about situations of rampant dictatorial tendencies or situations where governments or leaders exercising, you know, plain sense of dictatorship. We're talking about situations of arbitrariness and corruption, pervasive and
Moni, are you still with us?
I think we have some technical issues with him there, but yes.
Moni, are you still with us?
Hello?
All right, go on, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go on, please.
All right. So what the president has done now is effectively staging a civilian coup. We saw his unilateral dismissal of the prime minister, you know, in a manner that many people have described as very opportunistic and a civil coup situation. And is largely out of the fallout of the COVID-related measures and COVID-related issues in the country. What we are seeing now is effectively putting himself out there as, a dictator, because the judiciary is effectively the glue of a democracy. It is what stitches things together in terms of democratic governance, rule of law, and good governance generally. So if you have a dictator that is pliant, that is at the beck and call of the president, that is dictated to by the president, because this decree actually stipulates that he would be responsible for appointing, for directing, or for reassignment or transfers. And in some instances, he could stand in making decisions regarding the judiciary. That clearly is outside democratic principles and outside the perimeters of a democracy. And that is what citizens have been resisting. And that is what international players should be interested in order to avoid Tunisia falling back into a state of, instability.
Okay, Mamuni, let's look at the effect of this decree on the populace. What do you think will happen to the people of Tunisia?
Of course, we are already seeing, protests being organized. We're seeing people massing up and people calling for, protest criticisms on social media and traditional media. We do not think that this would go, without incident. I think that we're going to have much more protests happen, and eventually things could come into full force where he would be compelled to rescind his decision. And of course, we're already seeing him backpedaling. We're seeing him trying to reclarify and restate, his position on this matter. And I do not think that this would be the end of it in terms of on the part of the citizens. You can see clearly the people of Tunisia are largely very, very active citizens when it comes to these things. Yeah. And we should expect more civil actions on the streets.
Now, Mutaru, President Kais Saied did mention last year when he dismissed Parliament and sacked the Prime Minister, everything is about corruption. He knows best. And he did say that he was cleansing the judiciary of corruption, that the judiciary is corrupt. But let's take a listen to his exact words and I'll let you respond to that.
ليكن الأمر واضحا أن هذا المجلس سيتم حله بمقتضى هذا المرسوم وتعويضه بمجلس آخر، ولا مجال للتشكيك في هذا الخيار. القضاء وظيفة وليست سلطة، والقضاة كلهم خاضعون للقانون، لا يمكن أن تكون هناك دولة خارج.
Now, Mutaru, President Kais Saied said removing the Judicial Council was necessary as Tunisians wanted the country cleansed of corruption. He said his actions were temporary but not specified a fixed term for the newly formed Provisional Council. Are his actions justified? Does one man, why should one man have so much power?
Of course, this clearly is outside, democratic principles. And if you watch the language and the posture, it is largely very adversarial, in terms of composure, in terms of tone, in terms of choice of words. This is not what you expect, to say and have citizens clap for you or rise up in support. You definitely, certainly are calling for resistance when you say things like this. And, in these circumstances. So clearly, this outside mandate of a democracy, he's effectively putting himself up as a new dictator, in the scene. And I do not think that this is sustainable. And for his best interest, it is important that he reverses this trend as soon as possible. This is not going to be sustainable.
Okay, Mamuni, let's get reactions now from the judges. We've seen the citizens protesting. I've seen Kai's reason for his dissolvement of the Judicial Council. Now, let's hear from the judges themselves, because we've seen lots of reactions from them, once again condemning the decree from President Kais Saied.
تلقينا الخبر هذايا بصدمة كبيرة حقيقة. كنا نعتقد أن السلطة القضائية بمنأى عن تدخل رئيس الجمهورية بناء على ما صرح به منذ 25 جويلية. كنا نعتقد أن رئيس الجمهورية بعد أن صرح في مرارا وتكرارا أنه يحترم الديمقراطية وأنه يحترم الحقوق والحريات، أنه سيبقي على السلطة التي تحمي هذه الحقوق وهذه الحريات. نعتقد أن هذه خطوة خطيرة جدا. هذا فيه مساس جوهري بدولة القانون، مساس جوهري بالنظام الديمقراطي، مساس جوهري بحقوق التونسيين والتونسيات. هذه خطوة نحو وضع اليد بالتمام والكمال على القضاء الحاكم والجالس وعلى النيابة العمومية وعلى المؤسسات التي تنظم هذه السلطة. اليوم نريد أن السيد رئيس الجمهورية يتراجع على هذه القرارات، يعيد الحالة إلى ما كانت عليه، ونفتح حوار حقيقي جدي لإصلاح المنظومة القضائية.
We've heard the President Kais Saied speak with so much passion. Once again, we're hearing from the President of the Association of Tunisian Judges, and Samadi, and he expressed shock and utmost revealed that this is an attack on the rule of law. Now, he also said that a crisis cell has been created to discuss the actions going forward after the President prohibited the right to strike enshrined in Article 36 of the Constitution. We know that the judges have been on strike since Wednesday. So what other actions do you think the judges will or can take? And do you think the strike will continue with this new decree?
I think this is the highest level of provocation of the institutions, of governance. And as you listen to him, you see clearly they are very, very incensed by what the president has done or seeking to do. And I think the president is shooting himself in the foot. Like I mentioned earlier, this is not going to be sustainable. Democracy survives on the rule of law and the independence of the judiciary. Here you talk about, there's a philosopher or writer called Baron de Montesquieu who talks about the independence of judiciary, independence of legislature, the independence of the executive, the separation of powers. The separation of powers need to be in full force and effect to ensure that the institutions of governance work independently and to deliver the goods of democracy. And what we're seeing here is clearly the opposite of that. And people who have been in the system for long, obviously those who know better, would be very incensed by that. And what I would expect to see the judiciary uncharacteristically, protesting and speaking out in a way that traditionally you would not find them speak. And that is going to be part of what they will put up in terms of resistance to get him to reverse this decree. I think that it's unfortunate that Tunisia is in this state. And it's unfortunate because we find that happen too many times in history. One dictator replaced by another potential dictator. And this kinds of things have a huge effect on other institutions and other countries. Things like this have a contagious effect. Countries that watch, other countries could be watching, other leaders could be watching and seeking to copy these things into their space. And these things are very, very important. I think that democracy as a whole cannot guarantee development or prosperity if the focus of leadership is on power and not the people. And that is what we're seeing happen in Tunisia.
Thank you, Muktaru Umuni Mukhtar, for joining us on the conversation today. It's quite ironic because President Kais Saied, before he became president, was a professor of constitutional law. So it's interesting to see him act this way. But thank you very much for being a part of the conversation. I'm Benga Aboro.
Thank you so much, Mukhtar. All right, we wonder what happens when people get to the seat of power, that once they get there, they begin to amass so much powers. This is where we'll draw the curtains for today's edition of The Conversation. Do join us again on Wednesday, 5 p.m. West African time for another interesting edition of The Conversation. I am Rita Omodia.
And I'm Benga Aboro. I'll see you next time on The Conversation.